The tank that you see behind me here has been thriving for months and months, and I have no idea what the water parameters are. So in this video today, we are going to test this tank together and find out if micromanaging your reef tank might be more detrimental than good. If you've never seen this before, this is my 2-foot tall wine glass pico saltwater mixed reef aquarium. And yes, that is a mouthful, but it tells you what's going on in the tank. It was gifted to me by my wife.
I'm gonna turn this into a saltwater aquarium. Follow for more.
With the Jean Jobert reef bowl being the inspiration for this tank. So I've got a deep sand bed down here at the bottom with a plenum right underneath the sand bed, and that's going to help the parameters maintain themselves in this style of aquarium. A few months back, I decided to transfer it and take all the macroalgae that I had in the tank, take that out, start adding some corals and some other life to the tank, and here's where we are today. And the main thing that people love to say in the reef keeping hobby, and there's a lot of truth in this, is that the smaller the tank is, the more difficult it is to take care of. Obviously, from a water pollution per water volume sort of a mindset, bigger tank, bigger volume, more pollution it takes to upset that system. So in theory, this little system here should need absolute daily attention, but it doesn't. All I ever do to this tank is top off the water and feed it every now and then. And that's it. So before we dig too far into talking about micromanaging your small or even your large reef tanks for that matter, let's get the testing done and see what the results are. Now, I always recommend that you double check the calibration of your refractometer with a calibration solution of a known concentration. This is 35 ppt calibration solution, and I'm going to temp match it by putting it in the tank just like that. We're going to let that sit in there for 10 minutes and check the salinity. And while the time lapse runs in the background, I want to take this opportunity to thank the channel members for their contributions and their support to the channel. If you want to become a channel member, you can do that through the link in the description or by clicking the join button on the homepage. And thank you so much to all of the new subscribers to the channel. You guys are absolutely amazing. You're making this thing happen for Reef Rookies, and what we have coming up in the future is going to be super awesome. So if this is your first time here, smash that subscribe button and let's get back to it. All right, so I just finished up all the testing and the results really aren't that surprising to me. There was only one thing that I'm a little bit concerned about. Let's talk about it. The temperature of this tank is 78 degrees. I have a little small 10-watt heater installed on the back, and it's doing just a fine job at keeping the temperature exactly where it needs to be. Salinity came back at 1.023, not where I want it, but it's fine. 1.023 isn't going to hurt anything. Obviously, you're looking at this thing right now, and the tank looks pretty darn good, if I do say so myself. Ammonia and nitrites both came back at 0, which is great. That's what we expect. Nitrates are at 5 ppm, which is to be expected because I do not heavily feed this tank with anything at all, really. I drop a few pellets in every now and then for the cleaners to have something to go after. And other than the harlequin shrimp, getting a starfish leg every now and then, that's all the food that ever goes into this tank. The phosphates were 0 upwards to 0.3. It was very hard to distinguish that on the Saltwater test kits. Let's just say that it's nearing 0, but there was a hint of blue in there, so there is some phosphates in the water. pH was 7.7, which is really the lowest number that I would like to see in a tank like this. It definitely isn't a problem, and I don't think it's anything that I'm going to try to correct. Calcium came back at 425. Magnesium was at 1250. Both of these numbers are absolutely fine considering the corals that I have in the tank. And the only one that was a slight concern was the alkalinity came back at 6.5 DKH. Now this is a little bit low for the alkalinity, but look at the tank. And that is my point here. So here's the thing with these aquariums. They are going to find their own sort of sweet spot, their own balance point, if you leave them alone long enough. Now, does me saying that, does that mean never touch or test the tank? No, it doesn't. But what I mean is when you set the tank up, when it's through the nitrogen cycle, it's getting into the ugly phase, you're ready to put some things in the tank, add some of your fish, add some of your cleaners, maybe even add some of your corals, and then leave it alone. Hey, listen, I'm gonna let you do you, and I'm gonna get out of here. All right? Be good. Don't micromanage the parameters in the tank unless one is dangerous to the animals. In that case, then yes, you want to fix that. But if your calcium is at 380 and you would have heard and been told by everybody that it should be at 420, it's fine at 380. You're not going to have any problems with your calcium being at 380 versus 420. Just like in the tank that I'm showing you today, there is no issues with this tank having the alkalinity at 6.5. Now, is the growth going to be a little slower? Yes. My SPS that are in here are going to grow a little bit slower. My point here is doing too much too soon in your tank's life is going to introduce instability to the aquarium, and that is the opposite of what we want to do. If you set your tank up, you're through the ugly phase, you're adding a few corals in, and your phosphates are way down low, give it some time for the tank to mature before you start doing things to bring those phosphates up. And on the other flip side of that, if your phosphates are reading a little bit too high, before you start really going aggressively at the phosphates, take them down slowly over the next couple of months. Let the tank find a balance within itself just by doing some water changes every week and letting the tank run. All right, alkalinity was at 7.1. I added 0.003 solution, it became 0.89. Okay, so it's 0.89 divided by 10. Okay, I need 0.0001 drops of alkalinity. Okay. Some of the best people in the business have said things like chasing perfection is the enemy of having an awesome tank. And I absolutely agree. My other tank, my sea cardinal tank, about a month ago, there was something going on with my anemones that are in that tank. And I didn't know what it was. The parameters were testing exactly as they should. Everything looked fine in the tank. I couldn't find any reason for these things to be looking the way that they were. So I decided to just leave it alone and let the tank work itself out. And as of today, they have recovered from whatever it was that was making them mad that day, and they look better than they ever have. And there was zero intervention from me. Now, listen, don't get me wrong. Don't take this the wrong way. Testing is important. You want to test your tank. I was running this as an experiment purposefully to see what would happen to the tank over the course of 3 or 4, 5, 6 months with no testing and just every now and then adding a new piece of coral to the tank. Every situation is going to be different. If you tried to replicate what I'm doing here, you're probably going to have a different experience than I am. And that is the crux of reef keeping. Every tank is individual. But don't get caught up in every little blip that you see in your test results. If your calcium goes from 420 to 410, don't try to start dosing calcium. Something I saw the other day that I found kind of interesting was in my group, somebody had posted that they had just set up their brand new tank. It had been cycling for about a month. The cycle had finished, and they wanted to start dosing the tank to get it ready for corals. And through a little bit of conversation, we found out that their alkalinity was at 5.5. Now, this is technically too low. It is off the scale of what we would want, but the nitrogen cycle consumes a bit of alkalinity. So I think it would be a mistake for that person to begin dosing alkalinity into that tank this early in that tank's life. Probably, if they let it go, they do some weekly water changes over the next couple of months, that alkalinity is going to recover to a level that is sustainable for the aquarium, being, 7 or above, and everything is going to be fine. But if they begin dosing that tank with alkalinity right now, it's going to raise that alkalinity up. And then over the next several months, they're going to keep doing that. It's going to keep going up and up and up and up and up till it gets too high. And they're going to have to revert that, stop doing it, and then try to bring it back down, which is a much harder thing to do than increasing alkalinity. That's just one example. So how do you decide when to leave it alone and when to take some action? And really the key thing here is the health of the animals that are in the tank, the fish, the invertebrates, and the corals. If you test your tank and there is a level of something that is bordering on concerning for the health and welfare of the animals, make an adjustment. The alkalinity in this tank at 6.5 is lower than I would like. So for the first time in about 6 months, I'm going to do a 50% water change on this tank and bring that alkalinity up from 6.5 to 8. But I'm going to do that over a 3 or 4 day period. I'm not going to do that big jump all at once. I'm going to a little bit every day, bring it up over a 3, 4, 5, maybe even a week long period and get the alkalinity back to where I need it to be. But that's the key. Now, there is a situation in a type of tank where you would want your parameters to be absolutely spot on with certain numbers and things. And those are usually like Aquapora tanks or SPS tanks where people are just going for maximum growth, maximum color. They want that insane pop and all of that. In those cases, yes, that they can start micromanaging the tank. But most of those tanks are a year or 2 years or even 3 years old, and they're well matured. That is not something that you want to start doing right off the rip after you just set the tank up within the first several months of that tank's life. In fact, one person that I heard on a live stream recently, Richard Ross, said, set the tank up and leave it alone for 6 months. Don't try anything for 6 months. Let it get through the cycle in the ugly phase, and in 6 months, see where you are. And I think that is a really, really great way to go, because by that time, the tank will have reached its own equilibrium. And then you will know what you have to fix. Trust the visual cues of the aquarium, but don't react immediately to single small changes. If you have several corals in your tank and you wake up one morning and one of those corals is looking a little diminished or it's not very happy, don't immediately start reacting and making your water change and all of that. Give that coral some time to wake up. Give it a day or two. If in 3 days it's looking worse than it was and some of the other corals are then looking worse, that is an indicator that you have a problem. Or if you wake up and you have a fish that has always been out and about, he's in the front glass looking at you, swimming around, feeding every day, and then today he's hiding behind the rockwork, he's not doing well, he's breathing kind of heavy, that's an indicator that you may have something going on with the tank. But if in an hour from now he's back out swimming around looking at you happy and healthy, there's a good chance that he's probably okay, and it doesn't require you to take any massive, action right away. So let's wrap this up. This tiny reef tank proves that sometimes not knowing everything is a path to success. Not micromanaging the tank might be better in the long run than absolutely trying to dial everything into the absolute perfect number. But there is always the caveat that you have to make sure that the health and welfare of the animals are your first priority. Now, if you're interested in learning what corals do well in a tank and don't have a huge need for dosing in that aquarium, take a look at that video that's on the screen right now. That goes over exactly that topic, and I think you're going to be really interested in that. I'm going to see you over there.